Reveal Pavilion for letting us talk about the role of youth for intergenerational justice and highlighting the role that critical minerals and resource management in general have for the clean energy transition. I'm Bianca Newman. I'm going to be moderating today's session, and we're going to touch upon how resource management in general can be shaped by the youth and how to communicate that within the energy transition environment. Let me introduce the panelists to you. I'll start with Jody Ann Wong. Please come to the panel. Jody Ann is part of the Resource Management Young Member Group by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe and is the project lead for the guidebook on intergenerational justice and critical minerals. She played a pivotal role in crafting this guidebook, and she's going to be talking about it later on. Thank you. Next, Daniela Cáceres, please come to the board. Daniela is a marine biologist.
Recording in progress.
He serves as the regional representative for the Sustainable Ocean Alliance in Latin America and is also an advisor for the Vice President of Climate Change in the Congress of Peru. Like all of our panelists, he's a co-author of the guidebook we're going to be talking about. Next, Pratik Lokhandha, please come to the board. Pratik is from India, and he's also a co-author. He works with the Generation Atomic and is the director of the technical research team of Generation Atomic. And then last but not least, Walker. Walker Dark, like everyone here on the panel, he's also a co-author of the guidebook and also an ambassador for the Global Alliance of Universities on Climate Change. Thanks for being here today. But before we continue with the panel, Maureen Gallagher is going to give opening remarks. She's from the European Federation of Geologists and the Global Ambassador. She's an expert when it comes to geology, and you're from the U.S. Conservative... U.S. Fishery and Wildlife Service. Sorry, always get confused. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving opening remarks. And I'll pass over to you.
Okay, I just have to adjust here a minute so that I can see my notes. My old eyes don't allow me to see without getting my tablet going here. So I was really honored when Bianca asked me if I would do opening remarks for this group. If you look at the people on stage and you look at our bio photos, there's one big difference between me and the rest of the folks, and that would be the amount of gray hair on my head. It has been a very long time since I have been considered a youth in the world of resource management, whether that is geological resources or ecological resources. I like to say that first came the geology, then came the ecology. And so Daniel and I share a love of ecology. He is the ocean and I am the fresh water. That is how I've made my living for the most part, is by being an aquatic ecologist. I just want to take a minute to tell you a little bit about my journey, because this is about youth and how to engage generations in working with each other. So I have been with the same agency in the US federal government for 33 years. I came out of my college education and working for the US Fish and Wildlife Service, and I have stayed there. Along the way, I picked up a master's degree in policy administration. And so I have a little bit of a connection with some of the folks on the panel as well. What I can tell you is that 33 years ago, nobody wanted my opinion, right? That was not, you had to come in, you had to do your dues for decades before anybody really wanted to talk to you. The generations that are coming up now, the degree of problems that we have to solve are not just global, they really are across generations. right? I mean, it would be easy for the generation coming out of college now to just point their fingers at me and say, Maureen, you failed us, right? But they're not. They're coming out saying, we're going to be part of the solution. We're going to work with you on it. It would also be easy for them to say, oh, Maureen, you are old, you are out of touch, you don't need to be here anymore. That's not what's happening. And it is such a fantastic world that we are in right now. And this is why I am very positive in the twilight of my career, that we are in good hands and we actually can make these things happen. So how do we do that, right? How do we mix the generations? Well, everything I've seen in my first 2 days of COP, we're already, headed down the right path, because youth are everywhere and in all of the discussions, right? I need to find my clicker here and advance my slide or my pointer. Okay, we're going old school here. Yes, that is. Thank you. There we go. First one. There we go. Okay, so just so you can talk, if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is the best way to do it. I would love to hear from you and have a dialogue after the fact as well. But I also want to talk a little bit. Okay. Not my computer, so. There we go. Okay. So I want to talk just a little bit about the organization, but in the context, again, we have everybody's pictures up here. This is the team that is from the European Federation of Geologists that is supporting us. Two of us are, well, I'm the only one here now, but two of us will be here as of tomorrow. But I also want you to look at these pictures. There are 3 generations of professionals in those photographs. At any given time in any organization, anywhere around the world, there are always 3 generations. There are those that are in the twilight of their career, those that are mid-career, and those that are entry-level or just coming into their career. And it really doesn't matter what nation you are in or what type of organization you are in. If you're really lucky, you can have as many as 5 generations, right? COP is a great example of how you can get to 5, maybe even 6 generations of professionals, volunteers, people from society that come in to give you their opinion and to interact. And when you do that, not only are you getting more perspectives, you're building relationships, you're building tolerance and acceptance, and it makes everyone want to continue that path forward. Okay. So I think that's really important. I wanted to sort of get that point across. I'm gonna try this again. Let's hope this works on the slides. Okay. Exactly, a reactive mouse. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I want to use a couple of examples from the European Federation of Geologists about how to engage youth. Having these types of forums is one way. Getting down and doing the research is a really fun way to do these things. And there are so many different opportunities. The projects that we do through EU Horizon with EFG, they have all sorts of facets to them. They require academics, they require PhD or master's students, even some undergraduate students get involved in these projects. But we also have communications experts, policy people. I'm working with them to get sociologists, and we do have some projects where we have sociologists involved, even ecologists into these projects. I just want to talk a minute about the CRM geothermal project in particular, innovation, that's what the next 2 weeks really are about, is innovation. And the innovation comes about when you get those generations together. These folks can go have a conversation after, not just during this panel, but after. Meet with all of you, connect on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever your social media of choice is, and you can start to generate ideas. And you know what? Most of them probably won't amount to anything, but that's okay, because every once in a while you get one that really does, and that might be the one that changes the world. CRM geothermal in particular, I find fascinating, because the project is looking at, if you take the fluids from geothermal processes, you take those fluids, what critical raw materials can you potentially extract out of there? And to what extent can you extract? What's the carbon footprint? How much energy are you looking at to get that done? Right, so these just really ingenious ways of figuring out how to solve this cadre of problems we have with the climate crisis. SEEGS that's a carbon storage project. Okay? So it's far more complex, and I will openly admit I am not a carbon storage expert, and I am not going to try to take you through the ABCs of carbon storage. But I just want to illustrate that, again, these are two projects that we're actively working on that are steeped in deep science, engineering, but they also need a variety of stakeholders. There's a big portion of the CRM geothermal project that is about bringing new stakeholders to the project and to the geothermal industry. And so I really suggest take a look at the QR codes, and take a quick photo and go to the websites and take a look at them. But with those projects in mind, I do want to turn the panel over to Bianca for some, really in-depth conversation about how we can all work together. And I'm so thrilled to have the opportunity, because it really is impressive how much generations are coming together. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where somebody says, you don't belong, don't let them get away with it. Everybody belongs in the conversation. Find a way. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen, for the very powerful message. And also thank you for highlighting not only the significance of critical minerals for the energy transition, but also how important intergenerational cooperation is, and also interdisciplinarity. And that's something that we, as the Resource Management Young Member Group within the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, is also trying to do. We're part of the expert group on resource management, because we're trying to enhance youth engagement with the current resource management industry, governance, and practices. Within this group, Jodie Ann and her team came up with the idea on a guidebook on intergenerational justice and critical minerals. So, Jodie Ann, could you tell us more about how that idea came about and what the guidebook is all about?
Yeah. Okay, great. Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Jodie Ann. I am from Canada, and I'm a member of the Resource Management Members Group. And how this group, kind of the evolution of how this project came about, was last year at COP27, Radim, who's the other project lead, and myself went to a UNEC's guide event on resource management. And there we met with the Undersecretary General of the UNECE, and she said, we've been wanting to engage with young people for so long, don't know how, can we find a way to? And a few months later, through the hard work of people pushing internally and us trying to push the door open externally, the Resource managing this group was founded. And then in thinking about what we need to do and how we do it, we realized that there were really gaps that we needed to fill. One being that resource management can get very technical, but it can also be very accessible in terms of building advocacy around it. And one thing we realized is we wish people talked about resource management, especially critical minerals for the energy transition, like we talked about the energy transition, where people knew the direction that we need to go and what are some of the barriers and the safeguards that we need to put in place. And it was with that recognition of the gap that we need to plug and making this information more accessible that we decided to put together this guidebook. Now, that said, I am not someone with a geology degree or with a science background or with a climate policy and sustainable finance, but we also know that. We know that for the energy transition, companies and investors need to have interoperable standards in terms of understanding the resources that we need to access or to facilitate the energy transition. And that's where something like the UN framework application system really plays a big role. And that's with that being the central theme of it, we wrote the guidebook around, and we got a fantastic group of, I think, 15 co-authors, all of whom, some of whom are on stage today, from various backgrounds, in policy, in finance, in science, in business, in academia, trying to put this big project together. It's very multidisciplinary, and I've learned a lot in that process, and it's actually one of the first ones, I think, one of the first things out there that I see putting terrestrial mining and deep sea mining together and coming together on the entire mining practice as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. In the past years, there's been a lack of dialogue on how to improve mining and responsible mining instead of banning it. And I think the bad reputation that the mining industry has its justification, because there have been so many mistakes being done, indigenous rights not being respected, environmental consequences not being looked at enough. And I think the guidebook is doing a great job in highlighting how to do a better job other than quitting the job at all. So I can imagine that, of course, it was a big challenge to create a guidebook like this, getting together all of these co-authors who are all youth, by the way, which we are very proud of. Youth with a really interesting background, with expertise on the topic. But I would like to know, what were the challenges that came out of this? And also, of course, more importantly, what were some valuable insights you got during the process?
I think the first one is actually holding a nuanced view to mining practices and realizing that if it's done correctly with the right social and environmental safeguards, the development of these green value chains can bring a lot of economic and social prosperity to producing nations and producing communities. That's a fact and that's the truth, but it takes a whole lot of effort to realize it and to shift away from kind of linear exploitative model that we had before. So holding it with nuance and also contextualizing it to global realities is really important, because some of us, are from consuming nations and some of us are from producing nations. So the views and the challenges around looking at resource management, we need to take all of that into account. I think that's the first challenge. The second challenge was on the technicality of things. I think, spaces, there's a lot of pressure to be bold and be ambitious, and there's a lot of pressure as well to speak with a lot of technical confidence and understanding. So striking that balance, I think, in the editing process is quite difficult. And the third thing is just to make sure that it's relevant. There's a lot of reports out there. I think in the lead up to COP, every organization will release something that is 15 to 20 pages long. We want everyone to read it. So we want to make sure that first of all, it has a relevance, and secondly, it has a shelf life, and that people, no matter how old you are, from which industry background you're from, you can read this thing and have developed this understanding of the challenges and opportunities at play.
Thank you. And for everyone in the room and also watching online, wondering where you can find this guidebook, it's not launched yet. It will be launched within the next months. But you will hear about it if you follow UNEC's work. And I hope we'll get your feedback on it too. I'm going to pass over to Daniel. You're a marine biologist, and you covered the part about deep sea mining in the guidebook. I was wondering, what are some of the narratives needed when talking about deep sea mining from your perspective?
Deep sea mining is going to be one of the main discussions that we're going to have in the future, specifically because a lot of the narratives goes in the hand that the minerals that we're going to need in energy transition are in deep sea. Actually, when the Challenger expedition occurred more than 100 years ago, they discovered that there are a lot of minerals. There's actually more minerals in the deep sea, in the ocean, than there are on terrestrial ecosystems. But the thing is that the narrative that first came out was, we found the minerals to sustain the energy transition. That's what TMC, which is the company, said. We're going to eradicate terrestrial mining. We're going to take minerals from ecosystems where there's no life, and we're going to invest in the country's energy transition. But the thing with this is, this is an activity that still has not occurred yet. It is the first extractive activity where we humans are going to be able to plan and even take a decision on it before it starts. These negotiations with deep sea mining occur at the International Seabed Authority. There are three types of minerals in the deep sea. First, we have the polymetallic nodules, which are not little balls that are in the deep sea, resting, and the company used to say that they must pick it up and not have any impact on the ecosystems. But, and then we have the hydrothermal vents, mostly the inactive hydrothermal vents, because we're not mining active hydrothermal vents, and the cold crust, which are in the deep sea mountains. So the polymetallic nodules are the first ones that are being right now being ready for regulations for extract. The hydrothermal and the cold crust regulations are still not being seen for extracted, but there are currently 31 exploration contracts, which 22 of them are for exploration on the polymetallic nodules. Most of this area is in the Pacific. There's concessions for exploration in the Caribbean zone, which is an area with an extension of about the size of the United States. So I think one of the things that's important in this guidebook is that the importance of intergeneration, of having youth in, is for two main reasons. Usually, when we young people are being formed, they always tell us we have to respect the forms and accept what has been taught before us. We have to accept and respect the ecological views of how things are being done. So we as youth, we have an important role, first of all, of changing and bringing also new ideas and new perspectives and new ideological views of how things are being done out. And with this point of view, deep sea mining, I think it's very relevant because we have an opportunity to finally say we want a moratorium on deep sea mining, which is what we proposed to this more than 700 scientists have made a statement on it. The parliamentary alliance making a statement on it because deep sea ecosystems are the least known ecosystems in the planet. And usually, as you guys like historically, what has usually happened is people that have no idea how the system works go ahead and do extractions. Go ahead and destroy the systems. And it's the people that do the science, the ones that have to fight and they have to show the evidence of why we have to take care of something. It's usually how things have been done historically. And I think now is the time where we can say, hey, you guys have no idea what the ecosystems are about. You guys are doing negotiation regulations you have no idea about. You actually don't know much about these ecosystems. Give us a moratorium so we can promote the science, get the funding to the science, and let's discuss that later in the companies. Because also what we do know is that there are impacts that will transcend the benefits of the environmental, the economic benefits of it. And also another thing that's very important that our generation needs to know is the policy. And why is it very important to be policy? It's because we need to be able to listen, we need to be able to look at everything that people are taking decisions and making sure that every decision, political decision, has ecological concepts in it. It's very important that every ecological concept is included in legislation, is included in regulation, and is included in every decision making that we make. And ecological concepts are very, very important to be understood everyone. We're doing everything, we're negotiating everything without taking consideration of ecological concepts. Some ecological concepts that are basic are, first of all, resources are not unlimited, they're limited. Second of all, every species also can have an overpopulation, and can have an overpopulation that's far beyond its carrying capacity. One discussion that we do not like to discuss, not even at talk, is that we as a human population are an overpopulated species. Every species can have an overpopulation, and if we're denying an ecological concept of overpopulation in our species, we're denying a lot of concepts that are basic. Second concept is that also we're an invasive species. Every species lives in an ecosystem and can thrive in its ecosystem. We're a species that has left Africa 70,000 years ago and has left the Americas 12,000 years ago, and in 2,000 years we reached from the cold northern glaciers to tropical rainforests. So we have to understand that we're also an invasive species, and we have to be able to discuss regulations, negotiations, and activities with ecological concepts in mind, because we're not a divine species of many people. I think that's a key part that we can take into consideration.
You're right. I think it's really important to understand the consequences of our actions, and I think this is a great moment to actually take that moment to do more research on deep sea mining, because we can see at COP how difficult it is if you first go the steps and then do the research and think about the consequences. So I'm curious to see what you'll be saying in the guidebook about this topic. You're also an ISA observer. Can you tell us more about that role, and also what your takes on the need on ocean services for minerals are?
Well, I think this is a very good topic, because usually what regulations, the president of the International Seabed Authority, he always goes with, we're doing these regulations for the benefits of humankind. And I think it's very important to understand that the ocean has already been giving us benefits for millions of years, and will continue to give us benefits for millions of years more, which is led ecosystems be in the world. Peru, for example, we're a country that does already a lot of terrestrial mining. We're a country that its economy, strong economy, is based on terrestrial mining, mainly the copper. The cobalt, the Peruvian nobles mainly have cobalt, nickel, copper, and manganese. We as a country, Peru, we already made an announcement, the Minister of Environment made an announcement supporting the position for the local government. And we also, with Congressman Malaga, which is the Congressman I work with, we created the first consider mining bill moratorium bill in Latin America. Which was the first moratorium inside 200-mile range, with the justification of economic impact. I was not because that's the line that we have to go to convince Congress. And also because we are in the upwelling region, that's already very toxic, very acidic. And the ocean is not static, so it's a very it's a moving fluid ecosystem. So we still don't know what the impacts will be, but what happens when we mine here in the ocean and we create a sedentary plume that will eventually carry around and eventually affect countries like Chile, affect countries like Peru, making the ocean flows more acidic or we are not acidic. So we have to be able to know this impacts before we countries move forward. Countries in Latin America are not allowed to see it. There are many moments where I'm the only observer in the International Seabed Authority in Latin America. But we have countries still, we have Panama, we have Mexico, we have Chile, we have Ecuador, who have come on forward for more time. And there's been a lot of political work in it, but we still want other countries to join that are not part of UNCLOS, which is the United Nations Convention of RNC. But we want Colombia to make big public statements. When France has announced that they're asking for a ban on it. There still need more countries.
Especially because a lot of Latin American countries will play a major role in the global energy transition as being one of the main suppliers for very critical and important strategic minerals for renewable energy. Thank you. I'll go over to Pratik. You were covering the topic of waste management for the guidebook. So I'm wondering if you could give us some insights on that. What are the trends or barriers for effective waste management and recycling of critical minerals?
Waste management. And minerals. That we see even with
Closer to the mic.
So lately we are seeing circular economy that we pushed a lot. That taking innovation that we see with the newest technology of guía that locate your minerals resources very precisely, as well as since that really required since we have exploited so much art to get all sort of minerals that the quality of minerals that we see now is very less. So it might be like in mind you might have waste 50%. Now you are getting waste maybe around 70% and 30% is your minerals. So that is happening for many minerals. And then there is supply chain that has been very critical because we are also talking about just environmental justice. So earlier it used to be that people and multinationals were ignoring the rights of communities, but now with supply chain management using blockchain, that can be used. So that has been on the forefront of trade that we see. In terms of barriers, there is one barrier that we see almost in every sector, which is economics. How viable it is, how much money it will cost, is it cheaper, is it affordable rather than cheaper, and how's the demand for that critical minerals is. Fortunately or unfortunately, the demand for critical minerals will go high up with transitioning between energy that most of the energy sources require lots of critical minerals. So that has been driving us to take out the recycling and then circular economy. And so far we have seen great results on that scale that it can be done, but we haven't seen on large scale. So we haven't seen how well it can be done on balancing that demand side as well as economic side.
That's exactly right. It's another topic where we really have to look at how to do it right and be careful that the recycling industry won't catch a bad reputation like the mining industry had. There's a lot of potential, but challenges that have to be overcome. Yeah.
Yeah, there are many.
Sorry?
There are like many challenges and where to start that we should go in that, but one of the biggest technical one and also political will. So how much do you want to contribute to yourself? Even in case we can get technical things out, how about your policies and how about economic well-being of community? Is that taken care of? So I think that is one of the biggest obstacles that we have to solve.
It sounds like the obstacles that many people from the different resource industries have. And at this point, I'd also briefly like to highlight that whoever is interested in more responsibility and sustainability in resource management, the Expert Group on Resource Management by UNECE is developing a framework classification scheme that's supposed to really improve resource management across different resources and also include sustainability factors into it, which is not being done for all resources at the moment. It's called UNFC, it's the United Nations Framework Classification for Resources, and it's applicable to all sorts of resources, starting from renewable energy resources, critical minerals, anthropogenic resources that Pratik talked about, to hydrogen and water as a resource as well. And those are just some of the resources they cover. So if you're interested in that, please check it out. It's very relevant. The European Union did mention it a few times in the recent Critical Raw Materials Act to improve resource management in the European Union. The African Union is also very interested in it. And if done right, it could play a big role in revolutionizing and changing resource management into a more sustainable and responsible practice. Walker, you're the communication expert of UNECE's Sustainable Energy Division. Can you talk more about the role of good communication for an equitable, for a just future, for a sustainable future, especially when it comes to the guidebook?
Thank you very much for the question. Thank you also to describe the plan. And also, thank you for coming to our air conditioning. I'd like to just step back a little bit. We've had some really expert-led interventions there. And I just want to give some context to what we're talking about. First of all, right now, the leaders are over there giving their speeches. Right now, we're due 80% of energy is fossil fuel-based. Temperatures are rising, right? Never before. And this roads are not good enough from the leaders over there, the leaders in that comes very top. From the perspective of critical minerals, this bold, light future that we're going to talk about is renewable energy, wind turbines and solar panels powering everything, that also comes in consequence. The minerals that we need to build this whole light future in the ground, this may actually increase change. We're here at the Peru Pavilion, and Peru is one of the countries that leading this dialogue. It's actually, this is not part of the conversation. The huge amount of money required for companies and that's a big consideration. This is not really a agenda, it's actually where we need to be building this just equitable transition future and inclusive future. Everybody needs to be at the table and this needs to be rising up from the table. So what we talk about is energy transition. When we're building this renewable energy, the renewable first only. Often this is not a one solution that fits all. Countries with solutions. So I think what we're doing right now with the guidebook, with the young people at the table, with the open people at the table, this is a really fantastic start. And actually, what we want to be doing, getting over there to the negotiations, that's the next step.
Talking about, yeah. Thank you, Walker. Talking about making an intervention, looking at COP28 now, what would you say, how could we raise the profile of the relevance of responsible resource management, especially when looking at critical minerals for the energy transition? How do we ensure that when they decide for more sustainable energy practices, that they don't build a problem in other parts of the world when engaging in mining activities, for example?
Well,
First of all, I would say we're not alone. This is a rising issue, particularly in personal activity that are mining every collective entities that are out there. And actually, this, we are not alone. And actually, having working together with the NGO and if we have all the people this issue to the forefront. So we're not starting from ground zero. We've actually got this community here already expanding and right raising that piece that involves working with people and learning this kind of that's okay. In fact, what this is so we're already doing it, but actually what we need is more, we need more connections to those in town to have their example. That's what I would say. Because actually we are doing great work.
I totally agree. Yeah. So we have a very diverse audience here, and I was wondering, we talked about resource management here. You're all at COP. Maybe you also went to some of the other pavilions, other events. Maybe you've already had some talks about climate change and how we can do it right. Quick show of hands here. Who has talked about resource management at COP so far? Either this COP or the last one. Okay, so we got 2 shows of hands, which in my opinion is too little looking at the relevance that it has today and especially in the future. I thank all the panelists for your great insights. I was just going to come to that. Because the panel has not ended, we are aware that it is a topic that needs to be discussed about a lot. So I'd like to make space for questions from the audience. Please feel free. Yes, can we? Yeah.
Hi, thank you. My name is Matt. I'm from America. I work for an organization called Generation of Climate. You may have heard of it if you looked at the panels. So my question is that as we look at the critical mineral efficiency of various energy sources, is there any, we have to think about like, you know, to do this energy transition, we're gonna have to dig out a lot of land, we've got to take a lot of critical minerals, and we've got to use them, in my opinion, the most efficiently as possible. So is there any energy sources that stand out that can be more efficient on the critical minerals side?
We can do it step by step, because we have time.
Thank you for the question. Right. I think if you see all the energy sources, of course, we need electricity and energy. Those two are different things. So we have to get both of it. And for the minimum amount of critical minerals or any minerals required by any energy source is nuclear, compared to if you compare both wind, onshore, offshore, or even solar. And if you compare fossil fuel, that's maybe a little bit comparable. But nuclear is one of the least amount of resource intensive and efficient energy source. That I think in Peru has been introduced. There is a bill that has been introduced in Peru that talks about green energy that includes nuclear energy as well. I think that might be a good thing. Anyone want to add to that?
That's a really great question, but I'm gonna sidestep it, which is actually that we need to be using resources far more efficiently. So we're talking about recycling these minerals that we also what we are mining. many mining companies, the way it happens is they pick out the one metal that they want, and then the rest of it just gets thrown away. So actually, because it's not cost effective, and actually, it should be mining things out of them, should be using all of that. I also would say I talk about energy stuff, but actually, as you can see on the board there, it's not just energy, but we've got resources are water, in particular. I think.
So they asked if I would partake in the panel discussion as well. And so I'm going to go back to, with respect to your question, back to a point that Daniel had made with respect to ecosystems and ecology and how you consider those in the decision, right? So when, as an ecologist myself, the first thing I thought of when you asked the question was, well, if we're talking about the least amount of waste, destruction, etc., from a physical standpoint, hydropower. As an aquatic ecologist and a fisheries biologist, worst kind of energy or electricity that you can put together, right? I mean, we have absolutely destroyed ecosystems, entire food systems, right? Even for mankind, hydropower. And so when we think about this, it's a cool question. We have to be very thorough, in our thoughts. And that's where just even understanding the value of these trade-offs, right? As ecosystem services with respect to fish in this case, right? And how does that weigh against the cost to the community of getting it out of the ground, or the unknown cost of taking it off of the dishwasher?
Just one thing, so every country has different resources for energy. Everyone has different ecosystems, so that country has to decide and strike a balance between how to use the resources really efficiently. So that would be the way forward that I would say.
There's a book called Why Net Zero is Not Enough that was published at COP in Glasgow, I think COP26. That's a very good book that touches this topic. And for example, it says that we still need a lot more technology, we still need a lot more research. Because for example, if the United States is able to change its energy matrix to clean energy, it would need an area of around the size of Spain, with the coast of Spain, just with wind turbines, and around the coast, this area of France and Spain, with solar panels to be able to get the amount of energy that it has right now. So we're talking about a huge amount of space that will be needed for the energy transition, but also biodiversity. Wind turbines are very much, they destroy birds in migration patterns. And also, we're going to be talking about lifespan, patterns of the lifespan of what's going to happen afterwards. Is it really sustainable? Is it going to be eventually making it a contamination source, a pollutant source? And there's still a lot of debate that needs to happen. And yes, sadly, fossil fuel, it's highly related, it's warming, it's the worst thing, but it's also, when you look at it in efficiency terms, it's the most efficient. So we need to make clean energy more efficient than fossil fuel. And that takes science, it takes research. And I think that book, that's a really good topic to talk about. Nuclear energy is the most efficient energy so far away, but we also need to talk about the radiation, radiation can last more than 100,000 years in a way. How can we guarantee that we're going to be able to retain the radiation polluting source after 3 generations, 4 generations, 5 generations? We can be doing the monitoring of the places where we put the radiation, the uranium. And also in countries like Peru that's very seasonal, you cannot have nuclear energy. So we need to talk about also growth in a way, and another topic also, circular economy. Circular economy is essential. We need to be mining the trash bins. We need to be mining all the landfills that are there. There's so many minerals that are there that are not only wasted when we mine, but also that have already been wasted for generations. We need to be mining there, and we need to look at alternatives so that we reduce some of the consumption. Also, I think Yuval Noah, which is a great author, he says that we as humans are great at turning privileges into rights, and we continue to do that. Each time our footprint keeps on growing of what we need and what we call basic rights, because we're very turning privileges into rights. So we have more discussions.
I think when you asked that question first, my immediate thought and why I hesitated was efficient for whom? And I think so much of our discussions around energy efficiency is so fixated on the privilege of the end user to have that efficiency. And our whole premise of having this guidebook is to make people look up and down the value chain, not only in a linear fashion, but in a circular fashion, and realize when we talk about SDG 7, sustainable energy for all, when we think about the Inflation Reduction Act in the US and the benefits that will bring, they might actually up and downstream the value chain bring more harm to communities. And that actually creates less efficiency, less sustainability, a greater threat to their livelihood if that transition, if the practices are not done carefully with safeguards. So yes, efficiency for whom, I think that's something we think about. And also by shifting away from that end user perspective, that is a way to think about the energy transition in a more circular manner. And by start thinking about the end user's perspective, we start recognizing the right of ecology, the right of nature, and also the right of intergenerational access to it.
Thank you for the fantastic question. I'll quickly just add to that I think the answer to the question is also very dependent on the environment of the specific resource project. So we need to look at what resource project we're talking about, and then depending on whether it's whether like looking at the environmental considerations of it, we need to have a decision tool which can give us an answer to that. And I'll come back to UNFC, which I was talking about before. To my knowledge, UNFC is the only tool that can deliver that across different resources. So thank you for the question. Do we have another question?
Thank you very much. My name is Valentin Bartra, I'm from Peru. This is a fantastic moderation, very thoughtful questions, and a very good plan. Congratulations to all of you. My question is very brief. First, I want to make a statement. It is not possible to have climate change mitigation or climate change adaptation without mining. It's impossible. There is no way we can fight against climate change if we don't develop mining. It's better to develop it clean, it's better. It's better to develop it efficient, it's better. But without mining, forget it. There's no way. Now, to go into the practical side beyond the theoretical considerations, I am the owner, sole owner, of a rare earth concession. It's a 500 hectares, 1,000 acres concession, sole owner, 100% control for the minerals that can be used, critical minerals to call it, for climate change. It's available to you if you are interested in doing research for the real thing. You have to control of it. It's in Peru, and it has been explored with 3 geologists for climate rare earths on the surface. We have not done any preparation. That has to be done by the interested parties to really use it. We have already sightings that area that is next to a river that have been collected over millennia from the Andes to the sea, because it's next to the sea. So it's there for you to do the research. I can offer it to you to whatever research we need to do, because that is going to help us combat climate change. So the question was, what kind of rare earths of all critical materials do we need? In a very generic way, critical materials. But what is it that you need? Maybe I can offer you what you need. So we can apply it. Thank you.
Cobalt is one of the main rare earth minerals that are limited factor of Canada. But many companies have moving away from cobalt batteries. And now they're moving towards lithium, which is another complete problem in Chile and Peru that we have with lithium. But I think, yeah, the narrative right now is that we're going to be moving towards clean energy, we're going to need to move further. But are there alternatives in a way that the clean energy that we should be looking towards to also? It's a discussion, I think, the debate that we also need to have in a way. But yes, if we're going to be looking, I mean, our energy consumption is rising, our population is rising, and we're going to keep on having in a market perspective, in a market solution perspective. Yeah, like we're going to need to continue buying specifically in a way. But also, there's a study that says that if we're able to also mine the landfills that we have been using in the past 100 years, we could be able to use a local, then we will have enough local miners to be able to have the transitions in the local cities. So we could be also looking at the ones that are already in the city.
I just have a quick follow-up question. Are we talking about, was your question about rare earth elements or critical minerals? Just, yeah. The people online didn't hear it, but do you want to go ahead?
No, I just wanted to add, in my country, Europe, we talked a lot about this year, last year was about energy security, making sure each country has their own independent source of energy. And actually, when we talk about rare earth elements, talk about this topic, mineral security is going to become a very important topic. And it is already, you can see the policies changing in Europe and beyond in how countries are dealing with mineral security, and this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, we have more time for questions. We've got 15 more minutes.
Yeah. This question is for you. It's a bit of a annoying question. So, as we're all here for COP, we all understand the urgency of the climate crisis. Walker's mentioned that. It seems like they're asking for a moratorium. So, the question here is, what is the timeline on reconciling the urgency of the climate crisis
Very good question. How can we be so selfish and put in a moratorium when we need those minerals for the clean energy transition? First of all, the ocean is the main sequestrator of CO2. So most of the CO2, the ocean is the one that sequesters. And what it does, it sequesters the CO2 in the top 200 meters. It creates organic material, and then it dies and it goes all the way to the sediment. So most of our carbon sequestration is in the deep sea. And we need a functioning deep sea ecosystem to keep on sequestering the carbon. But what happens when you have minerals that are resting on top of that dust that's hundreds of meters high, and you take a tractor out and you lift up those minerals? All that carbon has been sequestered. In great part, it's going to go into the water column, and great part of it will eventually go into the atmosphere also. So we can turn our main ocean ally from becoming our main ocean sequester alternative into also becoming a main emitter. Do we want the ocean to become an emitter of CO2? We don't want that. We're at 418 part per million right now. And also on that price, the ocean as a main carbon sequestrator, it also needs a function of biodiversity coming on that. And second on that, it's the article that I mentioned previously ago. Khadija, I don't know if you remember, I think it's a WWF article, that the one that last that came out, that said we could do the clean energy transition without the deep sea minerals. So we do not need deep sea minerals for the clean energy transition at all. It's just a narrative that some companies are doing because they want to go ahead and move forward with some money. So yeah, very, very good question.
Do we have more questions from the audience? Yes, please.
My name is Eric Portugues. I'm from Peru. Was before Ministry of Oil and Gas. And now my question is the minerals is very important. But I read the other day that for the following until 2035, the amount of copper will supply with all the production of the copper that we will need only 20%. Only 20%. Our capacity to supply is demand. And we are talking about it because I was in the Delhi Riyadh, the future investment initiative, and the Minister of Energy of Saudi, they talk about the mining is scary. And we are talking about, because I visit many conferences, the forecast of renewables is fantastic. Solar panels, and solar panels, they need 60% of the mineral. So we need electrification, we need the turbines, we need everything. But the question is, we are talking in different ways. The renewables in one way, the other, the minerals in another way. We need to converge everything. But my point is, because I talked with the Saudis, the Saudi people, about investment, because they are invest in the last 3 months. They invest in Vale, the mining company. They invest just in the last 3 months, and that I say yes, but you have a lot of money to buy all the mining industries in the planet. But the issue is not only to buy the shares, only the infrastructure, how to monetize this one. The infrastructure, the social, the environmental, all they need to work together. And what is your opinion about that? Because you are isolated, you are talking, this is theory only. Every year is theory, but the practice is join all together, all the stakeholders, that they will need that. Otherwise, the fossil and the oil and natural gas will continue after 2050. We are moving from 2030 to 2035, the production of the vehicles, and we will continue to move every year. What is your opinion about that? But the real thing, not the theory.
I think that's definitely a tangible issue, that stakeholders are not around the table when we're talking about the energy transition. And we were talking about earlier about how this call, they're talking about critical minerals, it's not in the negotiation room because it's not included right now in the government's consideration of the harms that could be done. And the G20 was the first kind of international forum this year to recognize this issue and mention the UNFC as a system that could categorize it. But the G20 doesn't have a lot of the stakeholders in that consortium that actually are producing nations. So this is definitely an issue. I recognize it with it. And when I work in sustainable finance, and I work specifically with corporates looking at the disclosure that they have to make to provide the adequate information on their transition. And what we're actually now actively advocating for, and the expert group in resource management is actually doing, is at the International Sustainability Standards Board, for mining industry specifically,
embed the UNFC. So if you consider resources across these 3 different axes, including sustainability. And in one of the pillars in the International Sustainability Standards were S2 disclosures. It asked on your engagement with stakeholders, what are the processes, how many engagements have you done, what was the outcome of it? But for those disclosure frameworks to kick into regulation and for companies, just mostly big companies, right, to start disclosing, and for investors to use that information to make tangible decisions and positive outcomes, we're still a long way to go. But I do think if we can fast track that process, it's taken 10 years for that interoperable standards to build. That's one avenue in my realm of work that I see that can hold companies accountable, is to disclose this public information.
Just also to clarify on UNFC. So UNFC is a tool that aims to include all stakeholders, from governance, industry to financial allocators and civil society. So those are core stakeholders to take into consideration when talking about the energy transition. Right now, we don't have the information or the data availability to actually make the decisions we need in the best and most effective way possible. And that's the problem. We have a lot of theories around, depending on who sponsored the reports, for example, they come to very different outcomes. Like they come to very different conclusions or recommendations for policies. So what we need is better data for a better base for decisions. And that's what I hope UNFC can be if implemented by the wide variety of stakeholders.
So I do appreciate the question, particularly with respect to copper, because for me personally, copper is an easy one to address with respect to giving you an answer, right? You asked the question, is it really possible? Can we really get there? And I want to kind of come at it from a different angle, because I think the biggest challenge that we have is public education and public perception, excuse me, it's a long day. And, you know, and this is where the whole idea of doing this in a just manner, you know, comes into play, right? And the European Union has been working on the Critical Raw Materials Act, right? They have set forth a set of standards, right? We want to do more in Europe. We want to get more of our own resources out of the ground in our countries. But then also said, the standards that we're going to hold in our own nations, we want to hold in other nations that we still have to go to, because they can't get all of their resources in Europe. Having that sustainability standard, actually, I want to call it a responsible mining standard, because if you really think about the word sustainable, mining is not sustainable. You're eventually going to use up all the resources. So I just kind of want to make that definition clear from my perspective. But I think that is, to me personally, that is our biggest challenge. And it's because you have to have, most nations, most of the developed nations have permitting processes, right? They have public scoping processes where your local communities can say no to a project. I mean, that's what happens in Europe. That's what happens in the United States. Canada and Australia have the same issues to a slightly lesser extent, but I mean, all of those processes are put in place, and they're put there to try to have that responsible mining operation. But the history has been so bad, and it's been the negative opinion of it has been perpetuated by generations, that there's a huge trust gap. And it's really important to try to bridge that trust gap, to turn this back around to the whole topic of, you know, multi-generation and keeping youth involved in all of this. They're the people we have to convince. They're the generation that globally is saying stop, no. Because they're looking at what they've seen in the past, what they read in history books, what their parents, their grandparents, and if they're lucky enough to know their great-grandparents, you know, have told them about the environmental impacts, the community impacts, the displacement of communities with respect to these to operations around the world. And I think that is the biggest challenge that we have. It's a social issue more than a technological issue.
It might be a bit technological as well, just to add that. I think oil and gas obviously continue to be a significant part for next couple of decades at least. For copper, there's recycling that has been happening and circular economy, but how much that will play part of that, that's yet to be decided. Also in developed nations, as said, the fact that their past experiences or experiences in developing world about mining is not that great. So that's why there has been big NIMBY movement, which is not in my backyard, that has been going on for several decades now, which might be not applicable in coming years with education and all the policies that developed nations has taken place or will take place. So yeah, so hopefully we will see a good amount of copper. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for one more question. I think we have time for one more question. There's one from the audience. That's great. Oh, okay. A question is also great. Don't get me wrong.
Hello. Yeah. Actually, the question is improvised, but listening to all the stakeholders here, I don't know if there's a guideline or a plan or something related to an ethical use of the minerals that exist on the planet that we are going to have until I don't know which year, so we can use them wisely. So I don't know if there's any topic related to that, and if you're working towards that. So that's maybe question. And how do you think that should be approached?
UNFC, and also you talk very eloquently about how when we talk about sustainable resource management, at the moment most of it isn't sustainable, and actually the definition of sustainable we can maybe need to explore that concept further in future. Over to you.
Thank you, Walter. So did I understand right that you recently joined the room? Okay. So we don't have guidelines. The Resource Management Young Member Group created the guidebook on intergenerational action, and that incorporates different aspects of ethical implication when it comes to critical minerals. It includes deep sea mining, it includes waste management, it includes circularity, and it also includes, I'm sorry for everyone, I keep coming back to UNFC. It includes a brief explanation of UNFC, because from what I understand is that UNFC aims to be that. It aims to be a holistic assessment of critical projects, critical mineral projects, also for other resources, for fossil fuels, gas, for hydrogen, for nuclear energy, that assesses and looks at different aspects of the resource project. It looks at ecological, geological feasibility, geological knowledge, that's it. That's one axis. It looks at what do we know about the project? What do we know about the resource? It looks at how economically viable it is. So if we, in our economy, can actually make enough money of it to invest in it and to extract it in mineral terms. And what's special about UNFC is that it also incorporates social and environmental aspects. So, and that's maybe what you could consider the guideline on how we look at the extraction and what implications it has in long terms. I'm happy to continue the conversation later. We ran out of time now, so I have to conclude the panel. Thank you for all the great questions. Also, thank you to the impressive panelists. Thank you to Marie, who gave very good opening remarks. Thank you for highlighting the role of youth and also the role of resources for the energy transition. I continue to be impressed by the youth here at COP and globally. And I thank you for everything you do, mostly on a voluntary basis. And thank you for all the energy that you invest to fight for a better future.
If you want to join the resource management, your members can come and help be on site.